The Grant Per Diem program recognizes that many of our veterans who are homeless, who have been entering transitional housing, have had traumatic experiences, either in the military, during their military service, having observed trauma themselves, or experienced trauma while living on the streets. As a result of this, we have been promoting trauma-informed care, which we're looking at really basically ensuring that the environments in which veterans are living in when they come into our transitional housing programs are welcoming and safe. This is important for our veterans who are participating in our programs, as it will allow them to more fully participate in services and thus achieve their housing goals. Creating environments in which veterans feel safe will also allow them the opportunity to be more likely to participate in evidence-based services which are being provided in a variety of VHA homeless programs.
Trauma-informed care is an approach to services that creates an emotional and physical welcoming environment for veterans, especially for veterans that are homeless or have been disadvantaged, with the recognition that they are at increased risk for having witnessed or been victims of trauma, either through being homeless or through their time in the military. So we're working with all of our clinicians to help them better understand the principles of trauma-informed care, as well as to be better educated and more comfortable with enacting the principles when they're working with veterans, to help build their trust and really help the veterans address their needs as they see them.
What we've found is that very often the homeless veterans that we encounter through all of our different programs in the Homeless Program Office have had an experience of some type of trauma, whether it's from the experience they had within their experience in the military, or just as a result of being homeless. I mean, being homeless by itself is, you could make the case that that is trauma for people to experience. And what we're really looking to do with the programs that we offer, the contracted housing programs in particular, is to try to make sure that the environment that we provide for these veterans who are coming into our care is one that is welcoming and is understanding of the experiences that they've had, and the environment itself is shaped to accept that type of experience and incorporate that in how we lower barriers, that we make our environments, again, in these programs more comfortable, more accepting, and really able to provide a safe environment and a stable environment for the veterans that we're looking to serve.
One of the challenges for SSVF providers as they work with families is that the families that they work with often contain dependent children, young children. So we have about 45% of all the households served by SSVF have dependent children. One of the things we know from research, of course, is that the impact of homelessness is a traumatic effect, and it's particularly so on children. One of the things our providers need to be attentive to is the fact that these children, as well as the rest of the family members, need to be brought in a sensitive, strength-based approach where their needs are tended to and they're supported and they feel safe in those environments. Similarly, parents are traumatized not only by their own homelessness, but to watch their own children experience this as well. This compounds the impact on mental health needs and on other needs that these veterans may perceive because of witnessing what happens to their children. It is very important that providers understand and think of yourself as if you are in fact a parent, how you might experience such a situation and how you might want to be treated yourself if you came in for services. Non-judgmental, supportive services are at the forefront of any approach that begins to engage these veterans and their families.